Hi everyone, Bandana here. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a video about something new. Something that's definitely going to appeal to any fans of Hunt Showdown, probably Tarkov, and most certainly Stalker as well. So let me introduce to you Hunger, a brand new PVPVE first-person horror extraction shooter and slasher with RPG elements. So that's where the Tarkov stuff comes in. It's not just a first-person shooter, it's got the elements where you get progression. So when you die, you lose your items, but you don't lose your character's progression per se. That will continue on with your unlocks and your abilities, etc, etc. In that sense, the game boasts an extensive set of talent trees, but we'll get back to that shortly. The game is being worked on by Good Fun Corporation, which are a bunch of developers that originally worked on Hell Let Loose back in the day. So in other words, it's got some decent shooter pedigree behind it, which gives me good hopes for the game, especially with what we've seen so far. So the setting, a little bit more unusual. It's set in Napoleonic Europe in the aftermath of the Bacterium, which is a sinister plague that has befallen the war-torn continent. Unleashing unspeakable horrors, you're going to step into this heart-pounding darkness. A masterful blend of first-person shooter and slasher and RPG with a horror gameplay set in the desolate ruins of Napoleonic Europe. So think very much castles and cannons and things like that. Otherwise known as the world after the end in the game. I think it's a really cool setting for the game actually. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. But I really like the fact that not only will it sort of include, you know, the areas of France and things like that, but perhaps link in a bit of Germany, a bit of England, and you'll have characters from various locales as the game expands, and perhaps with cosmetic DLC down the line if they're doing that. Anyhow, back to the game info. As a survivor among the living, you will embark on a solitary journey or unite with allies in pairs or trios, navigating the perilous landscapes haunted by monsters being spawned from the plague's wrath, the Hunger. Fortune and adventure awaits those brave or foolish enough to venture out from the safety of the chateau into the world after the end. So they've released the trailer, which I've been having running in the background, and also a little clip of some gameplay leading into the fact that they're going to release more gameplay footage soon. The game's actually looking fairly far along, though other than these little bits, at the moment all I have is a lot of concept art and some shots from in-game screenshot-wise, and we will go through those, and what I'll probably do is try and split them up into a few different videos covering the different topics. But today we'll sort of work on going through the basics and get an understanding of what this game is all about. The next thing they talk about in their press kit is finding your place. So in the world after the end, your survival and prosperity are intertwined with the denizens of the chateau, which are a broad array of quest givers, shopkeepers, stash keepers, bounty hunters, and other quote-unquote living. Now, completing quests and building your reputation broadens your access to new locations, abilities, characters, weapons, gear, and vital resources. So this is where that whole Tarkov aspect comes in. Now, obviously, don't get me wrong, you sort of got that progression to some extent in the Hunt Showdown as well, but I think it's leaning a little bit more into how Tarkov does these things than Hunt Showdown. So you've got a sort of a melding of the two gameplay styles here. Next, they say a little bit about combat and things, and I'll put a few images of items and weapons and things in the background. So they're aiming for an intense and brutal combat. Initially, you'll go in firing with a rifle or a pistol, or you'll be lobbing explosive glass grenades with experimental hand mortars. However, their intent is when the ammunition runs dry or the gap is closing too fast to reload, you will draw your axe or mace to enter lethal hand-to-hand combat. Basically, the entire thing is built upon a mix of methodical and frenetic ranged and melee combat, and you'll be engaging both the Hunger, which are the PvE enemies, and also other living, who are going to seek to steal what is yours. And while you're exploring the environment, you'll be aiming to find and equip armor, bags, trinkets, medicines, weapons, and shields to ready yourself for the different environments and battles ahead. And those environments are going to include forests, villages, monasteries, citadels, mines, and various dungeons where you will find bigger, badder bosses than up on the surface. And those dungeons will come with their own challenges, and we'll discuss those a little bit in an upcoming video. So what about the other elements of progression in this game? Well, While much of your equipment and weaponry will be lost when you die, as we've discussed, all experience contributes to progressing your living and their level. Each of the living has a set of unlockable, unique, passive, tactical, and ultimate abilities, alongside a deep and extremely customizable set of mastery trees, with more than 100 talents to choose from. Build your living for stealth and solo play by quieting your footsteps and lockpicking doors. Specialize for range combat by quickening your reload speed and increasing your weapon control, or sacrifice your lethality, and support your party by repairing their armor and healing them. Survival is the only measure of success. And that's sort of the limit right now of what's on the press release, and also the Steam page is pretty much the same stuff. However, what they have given us access to is a load of concept art and in-game models. And while I don't want to go into too much detail today, because as I say, I'll do some videos looking at each of these in turn, I thought we could have a quick look through some today. So my understanding is these images you're seeing now are some of the characters that you'll be able to play as, or, you know, the types of clothing and things that you'll be able to equip. It doesn't always specify that they're one type of character or another, so some of these might just be characters that you will meet within the chateau and will be shop owners and things like that. Others do actually have a listing as NPC, like this delightful guy you can see on the screen now. Though honestly, he almost looks like one of the enemies rather than just a character in the game. I wonder if it's a bit like there's ghouls who are good and bad in Fallout. You will note as we look through some of these character images, there also appears to be a little bit of steampunk type stuff kind of squeezing its way in there at times. But I must say, I really like the character designs they've already got in there. That's like one of the big things in Hunt Showdown, right? The character designs of the characters you can play as are very impressive, and the stuff they've got here looks very nice so far. Obviously, we haven't seen a lot of in-game stuff yet, but if it's at this quality in-game, then that's going to be pretty nice. Okay, let's have a quick look at some of the in-game mobs before we end this video, because this is a fairly short section. They haven't given us too much when it comes to this so far. So first up are these dregs. So these are kind of your standard zombies, I guess. Think equivalent to your basic grunts in Hunt Showdown. And then a step up from that seems to be these shamblers, which are kind of more mutated. They've got elongated arms, and one of them's kind of bigger and bulkier, so I assume it's going to do some kind of swiping attack at you, with the bigger arm doing more damage perhaps. And they come in a range of different clothing with some very fancy hats apparently, along with a very anatomically correct model. And then the next one to maybe mention is the Thrasher. So this guy obviously is just full of blades, and I assume he is going to make you bleed when he attacks you. I also wonder if it's going to be the case that he is not weak to piercing attacks because, well, he's already been pierced many, many times. And then the last of the standard mobs, or I guess this one might be a mini-boss. This guy is the Brute, who is obviously huge and stacked, and I assume is going to hit like a truck. I guess this is going to be like the equivalent of a step up from the Armored in Hunt Showdown. Something tells me it's going to be more than the Armored. Now, what I would say is, look at this next image. How gruesome is this guy? I would not want to bump into him in a dark dungeon. I mean, I think this is one of the things that's going to set this game apart from Hunt Showdown, for example, in terms of graphics or how it looks, the aesthetic. This one's taking sort of a much more aggressive realism on the horror side. So I definitely feel like there's going to be moments in this game where you poop yourself when one of these things or something similar pops around a corner. And last but not least, with very little information provided so far, these are examples of what they want the bosses to look like. And obviously there's a very religious theme to some of these bosses. For example, in one of the dungeons that we'll go into in another video, the boss at the end of that is a religious figure, an abbot or something like that. So I guess that's what we're looking at here, examples of what that might be. Obviously you can see them compared to the size of a player character. And then this is a side shot of, I assume, the one that was second from the right in the previous image. It is huge. And it looks like it's got pustules and stuff on its back with things coming out of it. And I wonder if it leaves a trail of poison behind it. I mean, Who knows? But it does look very nasty. I can't wait to see a model of that in-game. This video is now, however, a good 10 minutes or so long, and I don't want to make it any longer. As I say, I want to do some videos going into the other elements like the environment and the dungeons and things like that from what we know so far. Hopefully they're going to tell us a little bit more about it in the coming week, just so I know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, I'm doing a little bit of guesswork, right? But make sure you hit the like button and remember to subscribe as well to stay up to date on the latest information of the game. Well, thanks for watching again, and I'll see you all soon.
Liberty, equality, fraternity, or death. The last, much the easiest to bestow. We knew that before the bacterium emptied the towns and cities. Before the herds were driven into the water, and houses burned so hot that the stone melted. Before the old order died. And now, you have come. And do you bring with you a new order? Or do you too possess the same gluttony that led to the end? I suspect we shall soon find out.